cheating wife, struggling. So my 26F, wife M, cheated on me, 27, with a friend of mine, 27J, for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I was the groom, and they sat us at that table so we would get together. When I first saw her, I was completely taken aback by how beautiful she was. And when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common. We clicked instantly. We talked for a while at the dinner and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up kissing in the middle of the dance floor. And when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was up between us. They were excited to play matchmaker. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left, not exchanging numbers, but about a week later I got a text from her asking me out. The bride gave her my number. I of course said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great. Other than small arguments, we never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into our dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded about her phone, girls' nights became more frequent, and our sex life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions, but was brushed off, and that I was letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue to go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her, so I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I left for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps and found nothing. And from reading stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I called her out. I didn't want her to say something like, "It had only happened once," or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read through every message. I connected the phone to my computer, printed out every message and every photo, and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him, but as it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum, because who doesn't have Spectrum? But Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put two and two together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me. But when I saw her, I told her to get the F out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All day, I never left my office. I was just silently raging, glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, the groom from the wedding, and told him I needed to go for a drink and asked if he'd come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I need to drink. So, without one word, I took all the printouts and left to go to the bar. I arrived first and ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, call him T, arrived and asked what was going on. I told him straight out M's cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with who, and told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we saw each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T, "Don't mention this to anyone," as I had just found out, and I haven't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me, to say I'm having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night. Then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there were missed calls and a bunch of texts, all from M, asking me where I was when I'd be home and if I was okay. I got home and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to pick up my car and go to my office, buried myself in work for the day, and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after, asking what was wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually, I snapped. "M, stop. I am trying to sleep. Go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave, and M had made breakfast, asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed, and she wanted to know why. I told her work has been stressful, and soon it would be all over. I finished up and told her I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I was going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes, and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well, and I handed over all I had gathered on her. The lawyer told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking, I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies, as I haven't told my wife I knew yet, and I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She wasn't home, so I called her, no answer. Called again, no answer. I texted her, "I don't give a F if you writing J right now. Get home. We need to talk." Lo and behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was, "Get home now." She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I said to her, "Wow, look at that. 15 minutes. That's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me, and I said, "Well, nothing to say." She tried to deny and gaslight me, and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence. First showed it from the side and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout. At this time, she told me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and told me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant about degrading and insulting me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she was. I put my hand out and told her not to touch me. She said we could go to the bedroom and do whatever I like. I looked deep into her eyes and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again." Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. "I'm divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes, and get the F out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry about how long this is, and if there are any spelling errors. I'm curious about those who have been where I'm at, and what I can expect from here. Thank you for reading. Cheating Wife. Update. Venting. Hello all. Let me first thank all who commented or messaged me. I truly appreciate the praise and advice you all gave. I've tried to keep up with the comments, so if I didn't answer yours, I'm sorry. I hope I have answered more of the common questions you all have asked in this update. If you haven't read the first part, go to my page, it's still there. After I posted the first part of this, you all have given me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning I planned on doing a bit of damage control of my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STDs, and I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, my father, and a few friends. They all have been supportive, offering their advice and asking if I need help with anything, but as I got this S on lock, I declined. I then started to contact her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad, thanking them for allowing me into their family, and that I was grateful for all that they had done for me, but told them that Em and I were getting divorced, and that I would miss them terribly. Not really. They were very suffocating, and while they are great people, I'm happy I no longer have to deal with it. I then told them if they had any questions, feel free to ask. I didn't hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to M's sister. This kind of hurt because her sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would mess up our friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Em and I are going to get a divorce, and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you from day one. You accepted me as a brother. I will be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent that text, her parents responded. I'll type up how the conversation went. "We are so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Em said anything to us? Em has been in at least a year-long affair. I suspect it started before our wedding. I'm unsure why she hasn't reached out, but I think you should call her. She left the house. I figured she would have gone to you." "No, we haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know." "Are you sure she was having an affair?" "I am positive. I found their texts. We're so sorry that she did that. Well, try and get in touch with her." After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jay's fiancé. I can't remember if I told you all that he is engaged in the first part. I know it was brought up in some of the comments. I thought this was going to be difficult, and that Em and Jay would have conspired on some master plan, but either Em didn't tell him I found out, or they're just idiots. I sent her a text around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for a coffee or something. By 2:05, She agreed and told me to meet her at some gross hipster coffee shop across from her work at 2:30. I arrived first and ordered my horrible coffee and waited for a few minutes. She walked in, ordered hers, and came and joined me. I told her, there's no easy way to say what I'm about to tell you, so I'm just going to blurt it out. Jay has been cheating on you with my wife. It's been going on for more than a year. She was shocked, so I told her, I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had a divorce to get started and my pity to deal with. She asked how I found out. I told her everything that's in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered and pulled out a binder. She grabbed the binder, skimmed through the messages and pictures, and just started to silently cry. I told her she was more than welcome to take the binder, extra copies, if she wanted to confront Jay with it or use it to see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and told her if she needed anything from me to let me know. She nodded her head and walked out, looking very defeated. I know you all told me to just stay sober, keep a level head and whatnot, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blare music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to my usual schedule. On a more positive note, I've already packed up most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etch. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it in the boxes. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I don't want her here any longer than she needs to be. Also, before you ask. Now, I didn't ruin her clothes other than a few picture frames, nothing broken. As of right now, there's nothing else happening. I told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is scheduled. My lawyers are hard at work to get me out of this nonsense, and 90% of her things are in boxes. I don't know what's left. She stays out of my hair. This might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thank you for reading. Advice is always appreciated. Cheating wife. Update 2. Venting. Hey everyone, I'm sorry I've been MIA for a while and didn't respond to comments and messages, but I think I've caught up, and now for the update. So, since the update, I've been enjoying my pity party drinking, and more drinking. I'd say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out about everything and can't put into words how I feel. I guess numb is an accurate word. In the last update, I told you all I notified everyone, and the only one that didn't respond was M's sister, who I was very close to. Well, that night I wrote the update. I had continued my drinking binge after I posted and passed out on my back patio with a bottle and a few beer cans surrounding me, and woke up to the smell of breakfast being cooked. My first thought was, oh Christ, M came back and thinks that breakfast was going to make up for what she's done. I worked myself up to a rage and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a screaming match. But to my surprise, it was M's sister. Call her W. I stood there for a moment trying to calm myself back down, but when W saw I was awake, she sprinted to me and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't say anything to me. She just took my hand, led me to the table, and put a plate in front of me. As I ate, she told me how sorry she was, and that when her sister showed up at her house, just said that we were having problems, and it would be fine in a few days. Then told me that when I texted her that we were divorcing, she asked M if it would be fine, and why is he divorcing you? M just broke down and told M everything. I scoffed and said there's no way she told you everything, and proceeded to tell her all that happened. W told me that M had said it was a one-time thing and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told W that I have no intention of getting back together with M, and if that is why she's here, she's wasting her time. And if she's in contact with M, W needs to tell her to find a lawyer. She laughed and said she wasn't here for her sister. She was here for me. She told me that of course she'd be there for my sister, but that she and I are friends, and she wouldn't abandon me, especially when I didn't do anything wrong. I stood up and went to her side of the table and just hugged her. I was so worried that all this BS that was going on would ruin her and my friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel so much better. W stayed with me for 2 days, guest bedroom, you heathens, and left this morning as I am preparing to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage. M can't touch it. I was gathering my hunting and fishing equipment. She asked if she could join me, but I told her as much as I would like, that she should probably go check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I am truly grateful to W for being there for me. And before any of you say she's into me, she's not. She's also 20. And that's way too young for me. It's just a great friendship. I almost forgot to say, I went to the doctor and got tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I've reached out to Jay's fiancée a few times just to check on her. She tells me she's fine, and she doesn't know what to do. I told her if she wants to meet anytime next week, so she could vent. I'm more than happy to listen. I'll be on here for a little bit, so if you have questions or advice, feel free to comment or message me, but I'll be leaving for the weekend, There's no internet out there, so I won't be around this weekend. I also want to say thank you all so much for reading, reaching out, and all the praise you've all given. You all have been a light in a truly dark time in my life. To any of you who are going through this as I am, the only thing I can say is to keep your head down and focus on what you want. If it is divorce, or if you reconcile, set your goals one at a time, in my case lawyer then the doctor, and notifying everyone close. Keep it off the internet though. Also, set time aside to get your feelings out. Thank you again, and sorry these updates are always so long. Cheating wife. Update 3. Venting. Hello, it's been a minute, but I thought I'd update you on all the new happenings. If this is the first time you're seeing my posts, you can go to my page and see my other posts. You'll need the context. In my last post, I told you all about W coming to my house and staying for a few days. She left when I was leaving to go hunting at my cabin. Good news. I got a buck and a nice fat 8-pointer. I got him on my first day out there, which I am very happy about, as it left me the rest of my time to go fishing. I only caught 2, but they were a decent size, so I made one for my dinner and butchered the other. I spent the rest of my stay at the cabin cleaning my deer and enjoying the views of nature. Other than a drink or two a day, I spent my trip sober, as I promised my drinking was only for last week. Now on to the last few days. I got a call from my doctor, and I'm all clean. It's not such a shock as Em and I haven't had much passionate nights in a few months, but all the same, you can never be too sure. I reached out to Jay's fiance but didn't hear back for some time. She eventually responded telling me she's staying with her family right now. She didn't go into detail much, but her staying with her family, you can only assume, as I do, that means it's not going so well. At least she's with family safe and with all the support that she could need. I told her if there's anything I can do, all she has to do is reach out. She asked me to meet and get coffee the following day, which I of course agreed to. The following day, we met at the same gross hipster coffee shop and talked for about 2 hours. We talked about everything that happened with Em and me, and she wanted to know what steps I was taking. If I was divorcing, or if there was any chance I would reconcile. I told her after someone cheats in my book, that's it. That the amount of selfishness and disrespect it takes to cheat, let alone for a year, she didn't care for me. I asked her what her plan was. She told me she was confused about everything, and that everything she thought was true turned out to be lies. She wasn't sure what her next move should be, if she should move on, or if she should forgive him. I told her, if you could forgive someone for cheating on you for that amount of time, she's a better person than me. She told me all of her family was telling her that she should forgive him and go on to get married. I told her I was going to be blunt with her and went on to say, just because it's what your family wants doesn't mean you need to follow along. Then said Jay doesn't care about marriage and what it all means. He cheated on you. His fiancé with my wife, if that doesn't show you, he's not marriage material. I told her she needed to do what she thought was right and not to have anyone other than herself make decisions that would affect her life. I told her, when I found out, all I could do was think of a way my heart could trick my brain into thinking of some way I can accept it and forgive her, but I just couldn't do it. I also said I only talked to one person, but I had already made my decision, and no one could change my mind. I bet when you went to stay with your family, you had a pretty good idea of what you were going to do, but you let too many people in, and they all gave their take on it. I finished by telling her all she needed to do was to follow her gut and that her brain and heart will always lie to her. But if her gut feels something off, 9 out of 10 times, her gut is probably right. She soon after thanked me, and we left each other and went home. The following day, I got a message from my lawyer that M had successfully been served at work. I thanked him for all his work, especially in the time frame he's gotten it done. Not long after that, W called and told me M hasn't left her room all day and she's sobbing in bed. I told her she was served and is probably realizing how badly she messed up. W asked me how the cabin was and if I got anything. I told her everything I did and how my time was there. We talked for a moment and hung up after I prepared myself and my house for my wife's explosion. I figured if there was any time she would, it would be soon, now that she's been served. So now I am waiting patiently, biding my time. I have Advil on standby for what I can only assume is going to be a bad ache. I told my friend, and he agreed if M showed up, he would race over to be a witness just in case all else fails. I'm currently riding waiting for Hurricane M to tear through my house, if or when she does. I'll send out another update. Thank you all for reading The Cheating Wife, Update 4 Venting. Hello again, everyone. I know I posted only 2 days ago, but I have some news. I wasn't on here after I posted, but some wild shit has happened and couldn't find the time until now to get to the comments of my last post. So I'm sorry I haven't read through them. About an hour or so after I posted last, I was waiting for M to show up at the house and go ballistic. I had no real reason she would do anything, but given everything that's happened, I never really knew the woman. I went around to all the cameras that I had up and made sure they were working properly, both the ones inside and outside. I called my friend letting him know that M was served today, and if she shows up, he needs to get to my house as soon as he can. I am not going to jail because of this woman. Turns out I was right, because M had shown up at the house banging on the door screaming to let her in. I immediately called my friend and W to get here, because M was beating down my door. She was cursing my name, begging me to let her in, calling me every name in the book and how I could be so heartless. Blah, blah, blah. She's not wrong, because the entire time she was screaming and banging on the door, all I could do was laugh. I then wondered why she didn't just walk in. She still had keys, at least to my knowledge. When my friend showed up, she was still screaming and cursing, so he started to record on his phone and stayed in his truck. But this idiot brought his wife with him, M's friend, so she got out and tried to calm her down. She walked up to M, putting her arms around her and trying to get her to talk to her. M then slapped her across the face, screaming at her to mind her own business. That made my friend, who now has a video of it, call the police. She continued to scream and curse until the police got there. When they did, she tried so hard to play the victim that one of the two officers walked up to her and she started to cry and tell them I hit her and threw her out of the house. My friend and his wife had told the other officer that when they came to the house, she was yelling and banging on the door, so they couldn't confirm that I didn't do what M said I had done. After that officer was done talking with my friend and his wife, he came to my door, and when I opened it, M said, "There, that's him. He hit me. I want him arrested." He started to put me in cuffs when I told him, "I can prove that she's lying to you. All I need is my phone." The officer stopped and told me to show him the view from the outside cameras. After reviewing the video, he apologized for jumping to conclusions and automatically assuming I was the one in the wrong. I told him I didn't fault him, but he then told me that they received 15 calls total from my neighbors, and apparently during M's rant, she had screamed out, "He hit me." So the officers had already made their judgment. After having to deal with the police for about a half hour, M ended up being put in cuffs and charged with disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and a DUI. As the police took M to the car, W showed up and came to me asking what had happened. I showed her the video on my phone of it all, and the officer then came up to me to hand me the case number and some other paperwork. W starting to ask questions about the charges, so I just went back inside. W followed soon after and sat next to me. She told me she left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store, but when she got back, M was no longer in the living room, so she thought M had gone to bed after she drank too much wine. W and I talked for a while, and she asked me if she could stay the night. I said she was welcome any time, and she told me that M had to spend the night in jail. I don't know why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She told me that when I went back inside, she called her parents to let them know what was happening and to see if they could bail M out because W doesn't have that kind of money. We had a beer together and soon went to bed when I woke up in the morning W and already left to meet with her parents. I haven't heard from MW or their parents, but I don't think it's a fun conversation. The cheating wife. Update 5, venting. Hello all, it's been a little over a week since I've posted, and I have some small news. If you didn't see my last update, that's because it was taken down. I don't know why, but I'll give you a rundown of all that happened. I'll try and keep it short and sweet and move on to the update. I haven't heard from M since that night, but my lawyer was contacted by hers letting him know he'll be representing M. Finally, we can start this process. I also reached out to Jay's fiancée to see if she has any news on her front. We only texted back and forth, but she told me she had kicked him out of her house and had her father and brother pack up all his things and drop it off at his house. She told me her dad and brother wanted to beat him, but she asked them not to, and that she just wanted to put all this behind her and move on. She thanked me for checking on her and told me her close friends were there for her when she needed them. I sent her the link to my Reddit page so she can see all the support you all give to me and her. On Friday, the moment I got off work, I raced home. I planned to go back to my cabin for the weekend. When I arrived, W was in my driveway. She wanted to grab her sister's things and had a list of what my wife expected. I skimmed through it and all, but one thing was already in a box or sitting in my garage waiting to be picked up. I told her I was not transporting or touching anything that was in there, and I was not going to be responsible if M wanted to claim I destroyed her stuff. I told her I'd pay for a moving company to come and pack and take all her things for her, because right now I'm going to my cabin and don't have the time to deal with M's shh. She said that would be great and hoped I have fun. She took a box of M's clothes and put it in her car. She then turned to me and asked if she could tag along this time. I said sure, Why don't you go back home, drop off the box, and pack a bag for herself? By the time I went to the store and packed up the truck she was pulling up, I locked up my house and took off to the cabin with W. The weekend went well. The last time I was up there, I realized what a gem that place is. It has a beautiful view and is completely secluded, so I don't have to deal with any people. It's a place where you can truly breathe in and relax. On Monday, I called a moving company, and by today, Tuesday, 3 guys in a big truck pulled up and started loading. I had every box open and recorded as they closed the box and picked it up. I took pictures of all the furniture and recorded as the movers loaded it. I thanked them all for tolerating me and tipped them each an extra $50. I then sent all the recordings and pictures to my lawyer and carried on with my day. The house seems empty but also clean without all her things here. When I started this process, my lawyer told me not to get rid of anything that could be considered shared, so I put most of the furniture in a storage unit. I've been sleeping in the guest room since she left, so up until I started writing this post, I've been buying all new furniture. I'll most likely be keeping the majority of it in the garage now that I have the space. I won't be keeping the house, even if I win it in the divorce. It holds too many now bad memories. Thanks for reading. The Cheating Wife, Update 6, Venting. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since I've posted. I coach high school baseball, so between getting this divorce done, dealing with my STBX, and coaching these kids, I don't have much free time at the moment. Quite a bit has happened, so this might be a long post, so please bear with me. Since it's been a little over a month since I've posted, I'll give a small rundown of what all had happened in my last post, in case you've forgotten. If this is the first time seeing my post, or if you need to go back to reread something, it's all in my profile still. A few days after the movers took her things to M, my lawyer received some paperwork saying I damaged her things and demanding I pay her $1,500 or she would be taking me to court over it. My lawyer sent hers all the videos and pictures asking exactly where the damages were that he claimed I made. He told me all this does is tell the judge, well, get how unhinged she is. And it might be a headache now, but when it's time for court, this will all be perfect evidence. I don't think her lawyer was ready for how meticulous I am and that I will photograph and document everything. When I found out about my wife's affair, I was for some reason pulled to this page and read all of the horror stories about the things these people's former spouses did to them, and I refuse to be another one of those stories. I've prepared myself for almost every outcome and accusation she could make. I wouldn't put anything past her at this point. M had called me once every other day, but I never picked up. If she leaves a voicemail, I don't bother listening to it. I just send it to my lawyer. Every time I send my lawyer something, he always tells me, "You are a lawyer's wet dream. You listen to everything I say. You gathered a mountain of evidence on your own melod. I have yet to have a client who has done so well." I wasn't exaggerating when I said he says that every time, but it also puts a smile on my face. Getting that reassurance from him that I'm doing everything the right thing just makes me feel a little bit better about this whole situation. About 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, my lawyer told me that we have enough evidence to bury her outside of court, and if it fails, it would look good on us for trying. So we set a date a week ago to meet in a neutral lawyer's office. Before we met, he told me no matter what, we would not react to anything that M might say, and that what we do would be recorded for a judge will read if it goes to court. We arrived in the early morning and went into the office. To my surprise, she was already there waiting with her lawyer. We walked in and the lawyers started greeting each other. M and I sat there silently waiting for what was going to happen. M's lawyer started by asking what we had to offer. Mine scoffed and said, "With the mountain of evidence of the infidelity and M's inappropriate behavior, after the only thing we'll offer is half of the selling price of the home and half of the savings account. That's more than any judge would award you. What you came into the marriage with, you'll be leaving with." Then he looked directly at M and said, "If you decide to go to court, I will put every message, making you read it all out loud. Then I will put every photo up for all into court to see, censored, but he didn't say that at the time, and make you describe in detail what you're doing in each photo. Then I'll bring up your recent charges and play the video that was taken that night." M started to tear up looking at me and asking if there was anything she could do to make this right. I said, "You've been cheating on me since before our wedding. All I can prove is a few weeks before the wedding, but I expect it was much longer. There is nothing at all you could do to make me forget or forgive you for what you've done. Sign the papers, it's more than you deserve, and I want to be done with this whole sham you created." She cried obnoxiously for 15 minutes, having to excuse herself to the restroom. When she returned, she was still in tears but signed the papers and walked out not long after. So in about a month, everything will be filed, and all I'll have left to do is sell the house. I want to thank you all for reading and all of the advice you've given. Also, shout out to the strong, successful male who's been bringing up what's happened to me on YouTube. I've read through most of the comments on there, taking the advice from there as well. I don't see anything else happening, but I could be wrong, and if it does, I'll let you know. But this will probably be my last post. So again, thank you all. I hope what's happened to me has helped at least one person out there. The Cheating Wife 1-year update advice. Hey everyone, I'm not sure if you all remember me. It's been a little bit over a year now, and I thought I would come back and let you know how I'm doing. If this is the first time you've seen my post, then you can read it on my profile. For the most part, I am doing well. I spend most of my weekends at my cabin, either hunting, fishing, or just enjoying the view. I sold the old house. I made a pretty penny with the sale of it due to the upgrades I did and the current state of the housing market. I had to split the money with my ex, but honestly, I would have paid more to get her out of my life. I used part of the money from the sale of my house to purchase the property next to my cabin, and now it's tripled in size. Since the divorce, I've only seen her once, and she looked nothing like she used to when she first met. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Now I almost didn't recognize her. It almost made me laugh out loud and call me mean or cynical. Whatever after what she put me through, she deserves worse. She mostly just looked at the ground while her parents and I talked. She didn't even so much as say hello or bye. Her parents tried feeling out if Em and I would try again someday. They weren't too subtle, but I shut them down with an iron hammer. I told them while I understood their position, I would never be with someone with such low morals and someone so weak-willed. W and I still hang out. She's worried about me. She doesn't say as much, but I can tell by the way she looks at me. She's tried to persuade me to get into dating a few months after the divorce was over, but I'm not interested. She said just to try, even if it's just to get out there to put out some feelers, but it all seems exhausting. Right now, I'm perfectly fine being by myself. I like my life how it is right now. Of course, I would have preferred to stay married if my wife had been faithful, but that is not the case. Once a month, W and I go out to my cabin to hang out. She likes to go hiking throughout my property when it's not hunting season. The rest of the money I got from the sale of my house, I used as a down payment for a rundown house, and I've been spending all of my time outside of work dedicated to fixing it. I spent the summer and some of the fall doing work outside. The reason I bought this crap hole was because there's a pool here. Sadly, there was a crack in the concrete work which caused a leak, so I spent quite a lot of time fixing it, which wasn't easy. W has been helping out a lot. She's put quite a few plants around to make the house look not haunted and more inviting. At the end of September, we started working on the inside. She's helped with that as well, because apparently my taste in furniture is gross. I don't mind she makes it look nice, so I can't complain. I only have the basement left to do, and it's such a relief that I'm almost done after I fix up a room. W comes in, paints and decorates, so it makes things so much easier. Jay and his fiancée have split up. She, like me, couldn't look past the cheating, so she called off the wedding and kicked him out for good. She and I have gotten closer. She comes by to hang out with W and me. She's even helped W decorate. They drink wine like it's water, so I have to have bottles in stock. I was planning to do a bar in my basement, so I think I'll put one of those wine refrigerators in there as well. Other than a friend or two, W and K, Jay's fiancée, not sure if I gave her a name and I don't feel like looking, have been the biggest support I have.